I'd like to say a big thank you to our sponsors, Talent Insights. Talent Insights are Australia's leading specialist data recruitment business. With offices in Sydney, Melbourne, and Brisbane, they're experts at providing recruitment strategy and building data teams for clients across industries Australia-wide. They provide recruitment solutions for all roles across the data lifecycle, including data engineering, data science, advanced analytics, customer and marketing insights, business intelligence, data product managers, and data governance. They're skilled at finding the best permanent and contract hires for your business needs, as well as statement of work, project focus, data resources. At Talent Insights, relationships matter most. I can say from first-hand experience, Talent Insights are fantastic to work with. Whether you're a business leader within an HR network or a specialist data candidate, Talent Insights should be the first company you turn to for all your data recruitment needs. Find them at talentinsights.com.au. Hi, this is Felipe Flores. Welcome to Data Futurology. Today we have a very special guest, Andy Sutton from Endeavour Drinks Group. Andy, how are you going today?
Yeah, really good. Thank you. And great to meet you finally, Felipe.
Oh, mate, great to spend some time together to hear about your experiences, your learnings, get to pick your brain. I'm super excited. Mate, can we start on your role and your remit at the moment, and we can take it from there?
Yeah, so I work for Endeavour Group, which is probably one of the best kept secrets, I guess, in Australia in terms of who they are. So most people will recognize our brands, kind of our core consumer brands, rather than our master brand. So we operate the Dan Murphy's and BWS brands, our big retail brands. Also smaller brands like Jimmy Brings, Cellar Masters, and Langton's are part of the stable. And then we also operate 300, I think it's 300-ish hotels across Australia. We also own a number of vineyards, so we kind of get that balance all the way through from growing grapes through to pubs and hotels and bars.
Right, that's excellent. Yeah, you would have a lot of data on me, mate, on between Dan Murphy's and BWS.
Yeah, so I should probably touch a little bit more on then, I guess, what we do with that data, and I guess that's that's probably one of the core things, right? Is retailers have got a lot of data on not just on their customers but also on their operations. Yeah, so the products they stock, where those products come from, all the product attributes. But my role really is to work with the business, or to be the bridge really between the business and the analytics team. So we have analytics teams that we deploy into squads that kind of sit in my world. My job then is to work with the business to identify what those priority use cases are that they kind of focus on. So we've just done a 6-month exercise really to set this function up, but then to work with the various stakeholders from across the business to actually understand where the priority use cases are and focus all our efforts really on those core priority things. So rather than try to do everything, and there were 275 use cases when we started 6 months ago, so we've had to pare those back to the top 10 or so, and then focus on those and try to deliver the value and unlock the value from those use cases, and then build and move on to other things over time.
Yeah, incredible. And how was the process of if you were in the business while the planning for this setup was there? How was that process? And then starting kind of like the journey of the last 6 months.
Yeah, so I think it was probably easier than I thought it would be. Right now, okay. So I'm a bit of a worrier anyway, right? So I was kind of expecting this to be really hard work, and I think the reason we made it easier for ourselves is we went right back to basics. So number one, I stepped out of my old role, so I got to focus fully on the strategy, which is not really a luxury you normally get. But I also we went back to the why. So why did we actually need this function to exist? How was it going to operate, and what was it going to do? So we kind of did them in that order, really. So we started with the why. So why do you need a data transformation team? Why can you not just execute on what you've already got? Why do you need to create a separate function? Why do you need to focus on the priorities? What's the burning platform? So we did a lot of work to build that up. We then focused on the vision and the mission, and actually articulating to the business as a group what it was that we thought we were here to do, and made that a bit more aspirational. So we took it away from being about building fancy models to actually being about how we deliver value from the infinite possibilities that exist in the business. We worked with the business to identify the use cases. We also went right back to first principles in terms of how do you prioritize, right? So we spent 4 hours on a workshop to go, how do you prioritize? And how do you look at the value, the complexity versus ease versus the strategic intent or the strategic alignment of initiative, and then came out with an ordered list from top to bottom, more or less. So, you start with 275, you can deduplicate it and kind of caress it really down to about 40. But then you've got to do some serious work to size those initiatives and work out where the value is. So we got from those top 40 down to 20 that we thought were really big transformational use cases. And then prioritized down to the top 3+1. So we've got 3 we're starting now, 1 we're starting next year, and then a backlog of however many, the other 15 that we'll tackle as we get there. But I think going back to the why, and actually understanding what value could be added to the organization, not just to do analytics, but actually to embed in the business and add value is probably the thing that made it easier. I think it also helps that I've been quite fortunate in this role and in my previous role that the exec in our business are kind of on board with the analytics and data journey that we're on. They've seen this in previous companies, particularly at Woolworths before we spun off. But also we've been doing some kind of data literacy and change literacy and kind of, I guess, organizational disruption kind of training with Harvard, which definitely helps change people's belief systems, I guess. And so that's really helped too, is that there's a lot of senior sponsorship. We're not just kind of push, I guess, from the middle or the bottom of the organization. We're doing it kind of company wide. And so that's a very long-winded answer, but yeah, it's been 6 months of hard slog and graft, I think, but across a large number of people to get to that point. And now we're really in that mobilization stage of actually we've actually sold the dream and done a lot of work, but we haven't actually delivered anything of any value yet. Right? We're now going to bring some people in and actually do some work to deliver the benefits. But that's the stage we're in now, is mobilizing a team and building up from what's a very small team today to a fairly, I guess, let's not say large, but medium-sized function over the next year, where we can start to really move the dial from a value perspective as well.
Yeah, that's excellent. And what were some I guess maybe some lessons learned or some tips that you have for people that are wanting to create that desire for change, to bring something new, trying to sell the why across the organization, trying to get alignment. Any tips there that you could share?
Yeah, so I think there's probably two, and you've got to go back a little bit further in time. So in my last role before I came in to do this piece, I was working on personalization within Dan Murphy's originally, and then in Endeavour. And the key thing really was to start. Right? So which sounds like almost I guess like it sounds almost naive, but actually we just started doing personalization. We asked for some money, we started delivering benefits, we started showing the progress we'd made and the value was delivered, and told the story and the narrative. So we're going to deliver this is what we're delivering, we've delivered it, ta-da. And then you can build the momentum really kind of quite organically. So when we started doing personalization, there were about 4 of us in Dan Murphy's. The business case had something like 2 million worth of benefits that we were going to deliver. Wow. There's now a team of, well, it's like 6, 7, maybe even 8 squads doing personalization, and it's a lot bigger number than 2 million. So it's like an 8-digit number. So that's starting, and then just carrying on when it gets tough, I think, is the other thing too, is that there will always be change. There'll always be resistance to change along the way, whether that's people being deliberately resisting change or just passively resisting change because they don't know what that change means for them. You've got to keep going. So I think that's the other thing. But it's keep talking about what you're delivering. To talk about the value. I've come probably 180 degrees on this through my career, maybe even 360 back to it. But I used to kind of think that analytics should stand alone, right, in terms of the value it delivers, right? It's like analytics delivers value and we help the business improve, or the business delivers its value and then we deliver the icing on the cake. But I think kind of where I've come to now is more, the two together deliver the value, right? And actually, you shouldn't be able to see between the seams. You should have analytics supporting what marketing are achieving and what merchandising are achieving and what operations are achieving, and they can't exist in isolation. So measure the value that's actually created for the business, I think, is the other key one. Everybody wants to build super sexy AI and machine learning, right? But at the end of the day, it's got to move the dial from a commercial perspective. And I think that's the key piece for me, and talking the language that people in their business are going to understand. That's probably the two key things.
Awesome, mate. Awesome advice in terms of meeting people where they are, talking about the value that they're getting. Make sure that communication is ongoing, so it's not just a once-off. Then I'm gonna do this, and then come back. It's done, and then doesn't get spoken about anymore. Like it's an ongoing conversation.
I do think that there is a role for the business to come to analytics as well, and I think to me that's the next kind of evolution in some respects. Is that, and I've got a colleague, let's call them an acquaintance of mine who works for an external consultancy company, but we've known each other for quite a while. And he talks about the data consumption gap, and he kind of, this analogy is the bridge. And you've got the business on one side of the bridge, and you've got analytics on the other side of the bridge. And the reality is, what they should do is both walk to the middle of the bridge to kind of, agree on a way forward. But what tends to happen is either analytics walk to one side of the bridge to engage, the business where they are, or they stand on each side of the bridge and kind of face off to each other, and nobody actually crosses, which is probably, in some respects, it was more likely to happen in some of the organizations I've worked in previously. I think what's going to need to happen over time is that both parts of the business are going to have to come together. So trying to not talk about analytics versus the business, or analytics and the business, but you're all one business. So how do you, uplift the power skills, commercial skills, communication, whatever you want to call it, of analytics teams? But also, how do you uplift the data literacy of organizations more broadly, so that everybody is fluent in data, or can talk data, and can read data, and can discuss data, and make decisions based on data? Because we've got two choices, I think. Either you wait for, like, my kids to come through from their schooling background where they're all doing data every day, or you've got to really invest in your teams to help them, because you lose out to the competition if you don't do that. So I think that's going to be the next evolution. Something we're definitely thinking about. How do we flex that data literacy muscle in the organization, and how do we build that capability?
Yeah, that's great. And how do you measure data literacy, and how do you know when you've activated somebody, a business person, with their data literacy?
Yeah, I think that's a very good question, to which I don't have a very short or eloquent answer, I'm afraid. And I know Carrie Jones was on one of your shows recently, and she was talking about data literacy as well. And I think we've still got to work that out. So we've done some benchmarking, I guess, kind of self-assessed. But sometimes I guess people don't know what they don't know, and that's one of the challenges, right? So I think, one of the things we're doing is we're creating a role that's going to focus 100% on data literacy, right? So bring somebody into the organization who will work with our L&D team to kind of go, okay, what does the organization need from a data literacy perspective? How do we deliver that? How do we measure it? How do we show we're making progress? Which is just a step forward to acknowledge that we've got a gap. But I think we don't have those metrics in place today. We're going to have to develop them, and that's at all levels of the organization. Yeah. So I think, from senior execs through to team members in stores, we're going to have to uplift that capability everywhere. But I think you probably start with, let's benchmark and understand, what the level is today, what we think the literacy is today. Put a series of targeted programs in place that kind of appeal to those different personas across the organization, and then measure periodically over time, and see where it's shifted. I guess the other thing that also shifts there alongside that is actually expectation shifts too. So you're almost trying to hit a moving target of expectation versus reality too. But I don't think it could ever be a bad investment to try and make people, to try to get more people more comfortable with data and understanding data.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, and mate, I don't have a good answer for that question either. Like at an individual level, the one of the things that I look for is how involved they get in the analytics, or when they're receiving analytical output. That some people, kind of like the least activated ones, they look at it as, is it done, and who can tell me it's correct?
Yeah.
And then other people get sort of more in the mud, more wrestling in the mud, get deeper into it, and asking more questions. And if at least some of the things that I like to see is if they're triangulating what they're seeing from this analysis with previous analysis, and then they're asking about the differences, that's kind of like a next level up. And if people want to, understand different cohorts, and understand that if you have about 8 out of 10 people that behave in a certain part in a cohort, then you're getting an 80% likelihood.
Yeah.
Then like that's kind of like next level. And then if they're people are comfortable to draw conclusions themselves in terms of the decisions that they're happy to move forward with, to say, I can understand that we see some benefit here, but it means that it works. So let's scale it, and kind of like that confidence afterwards. So
I think that triangulation point is actually really well made, and actually is probably underappreciated in some respects. So one of the things we used to do when I worked at financial services in the UK was actually we had an analytics teams and research teams together, and that meant that you got to triangulate across, in some respects, the what people do from the analytics with the why they do it from the research, and bringing those two things together and trying to triangulate. And you never got exact answers because you're taking completely different lenses on things. But the ability to triangulate, to see things that were directionally correct, even if they weren't specifically correct, and actually that takes more of a leap of faith than that normally comes with quite a high level of, I guess, literacy, is to go, well, they're not the same, but I think they're broadly okay, so let's play on. I think that is something that, and it may be because big data has become so kind of all consuming, right? Everyone wants to do big data and AI and machine learning. That some of those softer things, that soft is the wrong word, but some of those more focused things like research and asking customers questions and actually getting some why people feel the way they do has kind of gone a little bit off the boil. And I used to run a research and analytics team together, and it was the two in tandem that made things really, really work. You got the best of both worlds. So yeah, I think those kind of things, are people asking curious questions of the data? Are they coming with a preconceived idea, or are they actually letting data challenge their views? There's a load of tangible, but I guess subjective things you can measure, but it's also then how do you make sure you get those fact-based things as well, and get the best of both of those. And I think you can probably, it's going to sound really naive and cute and cuddly, but I think you can probably feel it and sense it in the business, right?
Yes.
So,
right.
And I'm a data guy, right? So that sounds really weird, but the ability to actually feel and touch and see this in the business, I think it's tangible in its own right in some respects.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah. One of the things that we had to change in the culture, in the aim of a data-driven culture, we started with saying that we want to be data-driven and we want to get there. And this is illustrated by your point around the leap of faith, that if people understand and then that it's directionally right, then they're happy to back it and take that leap of faith. So we've moved from data-driven as our end goal or aim to data-informed. And for me, it was kind of like at the beginning, kind of like difficult to accept, to say like, okay, so does that mean that we're like lowering the bar? Like what are we doing here? But it's you're able to activate earlier because exactly what you said before.
So we use data led, and the reason I'm smiling a little bit to myself is we had a call with a Harvard professor called Linda Hill a couple of weeks ago, and she talked about data informed. And we had a 5-minute debate over whether data informed or data led was the right verbiage. But I think the point was more that data driven is a bit, number one, it's a bit threatening to some people, right? Because it's kind of, you're trying to drive stuff from a data perspective, and actually, I don't really want to be driven. Thank you. I'd rather find my own way. But I do think that it's quite nuanced, isn't it? And this is the problem. I'm not a words person. I'm a numbers person. And data-led, data-informed, I think, is kind of where we're trying to get to, which is you get that blend then, even when you're using some advanced AI and machine learning, you're getting the blend of humans make good, empathetic human decisions. Computers make very factual, correct decisions. But the two together is what really matters. And if you can't get people to trust the outputs from algorithms and models and actually make decisions and drive strategy off them, then you're not going to win. And I think it's getting the blend of human empathy and computer decision making, which is what we're trying to aspire to, with the end game really of using analytics to free people's time up, or automation to free people's time up to focus on driving leading results, having conversations with suppliers and customers. That's what we're aiming for, not to automate everybody out of their roles. That I don't think that's the vision that we aspire. Well, it's not the vision we aspire to. Yeah. It's to automate things that people can get out of spreadsheets and get into conversations and relationships, really.
Yeah, oh man, that is very well put. Like that's really inspirational. Like out of spreadsheets and into conversations, that's where the magic happens. Um, yeah, that's awesome. I wanted to ask you about your prioritization and distillation of the use cases. That you were saying that, starting with over 200, getting it to about 40 was a process of, deduplication and starting to, I guess, create some groupings, some themes.
Yep.
How did you go from that point on, and getting to the top list?
Yeah, so it's going to sound, the first bit in particular is going to sound slightly old school, right? Which is literally I wrote out 275 sticky notes and I stuck them on my wall and moved them around until they made some sense and clarity, right? Now you could probably use Miro to do that, frankly, but I did it tangibly in like in my living room, pretty much.
Yeah, love it.
So that gets you down to the buckets of value, and yes, you lose some granularity along the way, but you end up in a much easier space to prioritize. There's no way you can prioritize 275 things with the size of team that we've got. So once we had that 40, we then kind of took a first pass at them and kind of said, well, what are the filters of things that we want to just put to one side? So are they really transformative? Number one, have we got the data? Is the business ready? We put an ethical lens on it as well, as in, is it ethical to use the data in this way? Thankfully, the vast majority of them, actually all of them, I think were. So you've got some kind of filters that then drop things out, and some of them move into the BAU queue of things that will happen in an ad hoc way at some point, and that left us with 20. And then we went through and actually sized them on the different dimensions. So we sized them from a benefits perspective. We also looked at how many decisions in the business would be impacted. So, if something's really big scale, but it only impacts 4 or 5 decisions, then it doesn't really matter. You can make those yourselves. You don't need a computer to do it. How much would it cost us? How complicated was it to develop? And then the last one was, how well is it aligned to our strategic goals? So does it actually drive transformation in a part of the business that is wanting to drive transformation, I guess, partly, or is up for driving transformation at this point in time? So how does that align to the overall strategy and plan? And that gave us then, I'd say, a top 8, maybe 10 that were, we got in a rank order list, and then it became a capacity conversation, or a capacity and appetite conversation about, okay, well, what do we want to invest next year in this world? And even from a bandwidth perspective, how fast can we actually go? Because you've got myself looking after data-driven transformation. You've got a guy called Rob Allen, who's our head of analytics, actually trying to build the analytical capability in the org. A lady called Tamara Cycling trying to do the same from a data perspective. You start to go, well, actually, have we got the bandwidth amongst us to, number one, visualize all this stuff? And then number 2, to go out and recruit the people in to do this, or do we have to chunk it up? So we made the call to start with 3 use cases this year. They've kicked off and we're mobilizing. So we're on a recruitment kind of drive at the moment to bring in people to support those. There's another use case that will start as soon as we get into FY23. So we're spreading them out a bit. And then the conversation becomes, well, how quickly in FY23 can we get enough runs on the board to give ourselves confidence that we can move on to the next set of use cases? And it's put that into perspective. 6 months ago, there was me and one other person, right, doing this. So Curtis and my team had a squad, but they were fully embedded on pieces of work that we already had up and running. So this has been 2 of us trying to build this out, with support from across the business, right? So it hasn't been a 2-man job, but that puts into perspective where we are today and where we're trying to get to. It's a fairly significant, uplift in people, capability, process, technology, etc.
That's great. And how? I want to ask you if you can tell me more about how you found the decisions that would be affected through the analytics, and essentially, how you're keeping track of the potential of an analysis or a piece of work, that the potential that it could have across the organization, and ways to reuse, I guess, the work. How did you work at that dimension? Yeah,
and that's really interesting. The reason that's really interesting is because that's probably too harsh. Some people don't really care about the reusability, right? So, the danger is that you think about a specific use case because that's what the business is driving towards. But we know that things like demand forecasting, even like cross product elasticities, cannibalization, halo impact, all those kind of things have got multiple use cases across the business. So that's one of the things that me and our data science lead kind of worry about, I guess, or think about at least, is how do we reuse? So that is one of the big considerations. How do we build these things in a way that makes them reusable? And I think personalization was a good example of that when we built that initially, is that we could have built it for one specific use case. And we started with one use case, but we always had in mind the fact that we'd want to go multi-channel, multi-brand, real time rather than batch, etc. And that's the same with the work we're doing now with our merge team. Is the first cab off the rank is how do we optimize promotions, but over time we want to think about price and range and space, all the other things that come. So how do we make sure we build things in a repeatable way so they're reusable? And again, one of the Harvard conversations that we had was with a guy called Professor Lakhani, who talks about an AI factory. Yeah. So you build things once and deploy multiple times, and that's if you're Google or Facebook or Ant Financial or whoever, and you're doing AI day in, day out, you're building a factory of models that are repeatable and reusable and scalable, not something that solves a specific use case. And again, that's what we aspire to, and that's what the intent. But we're not Google yet. So it's how do you get that balance right between you want to deliver short-term wins because you want to show the value in terms of what machine learning and advanced analytics does, but also having one end on the end game, which is, well, you've got to build out an ecosystem, you've got to build a team, you've got to build the foundations. If you just chase use cases, the use casing gives you a great way of framing business cases and talking about how much value you can deliver, therefore what investment you can in some respects afford. But so you do need to deliver measurable, tangible outcomes, but you also need to have one mind on, okay, well, where are we going to be in 3, 4, 5 years time, and what might that look like? And I think that's a hard balance. Trying to get trading and short-term performance right and long-term is tough, but that's the balance we're trying to strike with our portfolio, is getting that balance right, I guess.
Yeah, great. And when building the products and the use cases, or the data products and use cases, what type of business areas do you focus in, or maybe business impact? Did you focus on growing revenue, cost, risk? What were some of the things that were more interesting?
Yeah, so I think when we started personalization, that was pretty much around increasing revenue. So how do you get customers to engage more with their favorite products so that they spend more money with our brands rather than with other brands, right? So they shop more frequently with Dan Murphy's rather than with a competitor, or they increase the number of items in their baskets. So that was a revenue generation project. The things we're now working on are much more focused on efficiency improvements. So how do we reduce costs from predicting and avoiding waste, but also then how do we increase margins from understanding the right time to promote the right products, so that you maximize your uplift in revenue whilst minimizing your cost you spend on promotions. And those things are, because they're directly margin focused, they actually have a pretty big magnifying effect in terms of how much value you can deliver. On the flip side of that, though, they also mean significant changes in terms of process within the business, which and people impact, right? As in, it will change how people do their roles. So one of the things we are doing within this kind of reset, I guess, in terms of how we do these roles, is bringing in product managers who are aligned to those different use cases and aligned to those different initiatives, so that rather than and it comes back to that thing of how do you bridge that divide? You bring in a product manager, and their role in some respects is for a particular use case, develop the vision and the roadmap, and then bring together the technical, analytical, and business resources into one place. So we use a version of the Spotify model in terms of tribes, squads, etc. This is our second attempt to use it in the data space. So we did it with personalization, it worked really well, but bringing in truly end-to-end squads. So everybody from BAs, delivery leads, product managers, through to merchandise managers and marketing people into squads, and actually have proper cross-functional teams to bring SMEs into the squad environment, so they're kind of co-created and co-developing. And it's not easy. It takes time to get technical and non-technical people working together in one place. But I think it's more efficient over the long term than the business is here and analytics is here, and You get an SME's time maybe for 2 hours a week, and that's all you get. That's all you can get because they've got a day job. And I think that's the secret source in our world, at least. So and hopefully it will work in this space. We'll try, and if it doesn't, we'll try something else.
Exactly.
And that's the other thing I think we're pretty good at. I think we're good at trying things and seeing if they work, and if not, then we can try something else.
Awesome. So the lead there is the product manager for each use case.
Yes.
And what's the mix of skills or the background of those people?
Yeah, I think this is a tough one. So mainly because there aren't many organizations that have what we've called data product managers now. So you have businesses that have data translators or analytics translators. You have businesses that are product managers. Trying to find the right blend has been and to be fair, we've done it pretty quickly. We've managed to find people quite quickly, but it's not. It's a fairly new, I think, role that we're creating, or we're creating in our business at least. So it's a blend, I think, of product management experience. So agile, lean, road mapping, being able to envision what a product could be like, and then selling that dream in the organization. They need to have an awareness of data and be able to talk data with data scientists and analysts, which is probably the bit that's slightly different. Is you need people, product managers in a digital space. Even that's fairly new and hard to find. You then move it into a data context of, actually, you need to be able to do all of that. And I also want you to be able to talk data to analysts and data scientists. And I also want you to have some business experience too. Yeah. So it's ticking all three of those boxes. So in most cases, we've been able to tick about 2.5. But getting the blend right then across my team has been more my goal. Is as long as we've got that blend of product skills, data skills, and business skills across the team, then we can kind of cover those gaps and build up capability. Now, I'm obviously much stronger on the analytics front than I am on the product stuff, although some of my analytics team would probably disagree with me on that. But that's my forte, and I've had to learn the business piece, and I'm kind of learning product off some of my team because it's not the way my brain naturally works. But as long as we can cover those bases across us, I think we've got a good place to start. And we've become we're not a product org, but we've got more product roles and product capability within our business these days. Our digital team works with product managers, and we've got various levels of capability and grades from a product perspective in Endeavour X as well. So it's definitely something we know works in terms of creating those roles that kind of bridge technology, business, and delivery.
Yeah, awesome. Yeah, I reckon that role is critical. It's hard to find. It's very necessary in the industry. That's awesome. Yeah, you're definitely creating powerhouses there.
I think the other thing though is you can kind of underestimate or you can overestimate the product manager impact, and you can underestimate the impact of the rest of the team. And product managers are important, but so are data scientists and analysts and BAs and delivery leads and everything else in the system that makes it work, and the business stakeholders as well, right? So trying to finding business resources who can come into that world and can work within that environment as well, or even who want to work in that environment so they can take the change back into the business.
Yes,
that's absolutely critical as well. So yes, we can talk about product. Everybody knows product managers are brilliant, right? But they're not always it's not the 100% magic ingredient. You need all of the bits of the cake to make it work.
Awesome, because that was going to be. Oh, sorry, you go.
And I think one of the things, as I said before, I've been doing this quite a while, is that if you've wanted to run successful analytics and data teams in the past, you've always had to get that blend right, and you've always had to get people working cross-functionally, and you've always had to go where the business is because you're an analytics team. So I think Agile's great. I've learned a lot about Agile and how it can build high performance over the last couple of years. But I've also kind of learned that some of the stuff I used to do is quite Agile anyway. And we've just badged it with a different name. We've given it a naming convention. We've put some kind of more science is the wrong word, but we've put some paraphernalia around it or collateral around it, and we've packaged it up to be something. But actually, if you've wanted to build high performance analytics teams, you've always needed to communicate, collaborate, be commercial, and make priority calls, right? Because you've got constrained resources and lots to do all the time. So I think that's probably something that goes underappreciated. Is a lot of analytics teams have always been working in this way, just not necessarily with the language and the spotlight around it.
Yeah, and like not to go on too long of a rant here, but sometimes I feel like the agile structures are almost like too slow for analytics. That analytics is iterating a lot faster than say a 2-week sprint where you have defined tickets and end goals. I want to be moving faster than that. So
and that's
agile squared.
That is a tension that we're going to have to deal with, and that's one of the things we're talking particularly to BAs and delivery leads about when we interview them is how do we make sure we're not slaves to agile, but we use the parts of agile that help us go more quickly. Because I do think there is merit though in the connections that agile gives you,
yes.
but also the daily contact between the team. So one of the things I used to find, even when I was a long time ago, I used to code in SQL, and you could spend hours coding in SQL on your own and not get anywhere, right? On occasions, because you were stuck with like one piece of code that was delivering you multiple rows or duplicates or whatever else, right? And then you'd stick your head up and ask somebody else the question, and just that ability to talk about it, you'd suddenly go, oh, I get it now, right? You've given me no input, but just by articulating what my problem is, you've helped me solve it. So I do think that sometimes, and I've been there, you can be a barrier to yourself. And if you just look up occasionally and talk to somebody, so I think that side of agile definitely helps people. And I also think the ability to showcase what you're doing along the journey, rather than my default answer used to be, I'll take 2 weeks, come back in 2 weeks, and I've gone, it's another 2. So I think having that discipline where you're showing people things along the way, I think will help as well. But I agree with you. You can iterate so quickly that it becomes out of date by the time you have your next sprint review or retro. And I don't know what the balance is, if I'm honest, but I think at least it helps connect the business with analytical rigor, which I think has been one of the key challenges, right? You look at AI projects across the globe, not ours specifically, but they fail because of you build really good models, but you can't mobilize them, or you can't embed them in the business, and therefore they don't deliver any value. And that's the biggest problem to solve from my perspective. Not necessarily here. I'm not saying we're bad at that, but if you look at it in the wider ecosystem, it's definitely where the problems occur.
100%. Yeah, and that was going to be kind of like my next area of questions that I wanted to ask you. How does the data products and the use cases get operationalized into the business? How does that happen in your case?
Well, I think so. I can take personalization as our kind of big example, I guess, because that's live, whereas the other ones are still kind of a dream at this point. But the way we built it, in terms of we had marketing teams embedded in the business, right? Meant right from the start. Embedded in the squads, which meant right from the start of designing something, we were designing it with the intended use in mind. So, we had to create processes, flows. We used Airtable to productionize a lot of the kind of actions that we were going to use in the models. But you weren't building the model and then thinking about how you're going to mobilize at the end. You were building with that in mind, because you had the marketing team in there going, well, actually, we need to be able to do this. So how do we build that into the process? Or we need to be able to do this. We need to be able to engage with these people before we go. Therefore, this is the length of time we actually need. So otherwise, you get into a world where you build something and you kind of hand it over at the end, and either it becomes Frankenstein because you're just trying to jam it into a process that it doesn't really fit into.
Yes.
Or what actually happens is you go back to the old way of doing it because you can't see the merit in it. So I think the being involved from the start, making it, the other thing we did, I think, with personalization was we made it the only way you could send emails in the end, right? So if you want to get something out the door that talks to your customers and recommends products, then it's this. So,
awesome.
And I think that's what we're aspiring to do with the new use cases that we're building as well, is make it a integral part of the process, but also make it something that's co-created and co-designed, so that it's people want to use it, not just because they can see the value, but because they can see it improves or helps how they do their role. And again, it's going to be almost a suck it and see approach. We'll see when we get there, but that's the mindset we're trying to take into it, at least.
Great. And who in the new squads, who would be responsible for for the change management, for the rollout, operationalizing. How do you see that working?
Yeah, so I think that's a combination of product manager in terms of, because they're the ones doing, I guess, the communication along the way and selling the dream. The other side of it is because we've got resources embedded in our squads from the business, and we've got people leading those people as well. So part of their job is then to go and build that kind of change, kind of momentum in the business. But we're also not doing this in isolation, I think, as well as the other thing. So as well as doing data transformation, we're also doing transformation of those different functions. So actually they slot into initiatives that are already happening in the wider business. So, it's not like we're trying to go, right, we're going to outside in try and transform X part of the business. That part of the business is saying, right, we want to transform, we want to change how we operate. And this is the impact of doing that. And we're docking into that to deliver the value. And I'm sure it won't be quite that, neat and seamless once we actually start to execute, because there'll be phasing challenges and alignment and all that kind of stuff along the way. But I guess that's part of my job really, is to make sure that we stay aligned and progressing in the same direction. But I think we've got the same destination and outcome in mind. So I'm looking at horizontally, looking at, okay, well, what's the destination and outcome for data across the org? You've got the functional owners going, okay, well, how do I transform my part of the business? And there are multiple initiatives, vertical, and then multiple horizontal. That's the right way around. And we just got to make sure that we keep aligned along the way. But we're a complex, big business. In some respects, we're also small enough to have the conversations with the people that matter to stay aligned. And I think that's the really good thing about working for Endeavour, is that it's big enough to have pretty deep pockets that we've got the investment and support to deliver on these things, but it's small enough that you can navigate your way around the whole organization, and there aren't like 42 layers from top to bottom when everybody wants an input into every decision. So staying aligned should hopefully be easier. But I think it definitely helps if the part of the business that you're supporting and you're in lockstep around who's trying to do or what you're trying to achieve, then the potential is you get to a much better outcome.
Yeah. That's awesome, man. I'm so impressed because mobilizing that the whole organization, getting transformation in all different parts of a company, like that stuff doesn't just happen. Do you know what I mean? It's obviously it's such a long journey to get people to that point, like get them realizing that there's a need for change, evaluating what that change could look like, what the benefits are, getting the alignment, getting the investment, getting the organization behind it, starting to plan, starting to get the resources, start the implementation is kind of like way down in the journey after having done a heap of hard work. So amazing.
Well, as I said earlier on, right, we haven't actually delivered anything yet. So I guess in some respects, and it's a really weird thing, you celebrate the fact that you've got the priorities, worked through. You celebrate the fact that you've got a business case signed off, or you've got investment signed off. But actually, that's the start of the journey, right? It's the same if you've got a startup, I guess. When you get in your funding rounds, you celebrate a funding round, okay? But actually, that's the start. That's where the work really starts. And is to go, well, we had a plan of what we're going to do with that money. Now, how do we actually execute that plan? And that's, I guess, our next step on our journey is how do we get the people into the business to help us execute that plan? And that that's product people, but it's also analytics and data, etc. And you'll know as well as anybody that analytics people and data scientists are not easy to find in this. Well, not anywhere, right? But in Australia at the moment, they're really hard to find. Now, we're having some good success. I think we've got a decent name for ourselves in the market, but we're trying to go again now and accelerate again. So we've scaled from an analytical team of about 10 3 years ago. We've now got 90, and we're looking to scale again. So we're on a definite upward growth trajectory, but it's not easy finding people.
Right.
Sorry.
Yeah, I might start crying here. Like it's tough. It is tough.
So we are looking at how we tackle it in different ways, I guess. So probably nothing. We probably haven't got any magic wand that nobody else has got. But looking at how you bring in talent straight from universities and bringing graduates, or even partner with universities, looking at, okay, well, what's the capability even within our store team? So I don't know the exact number, but say we've got 20,000 people in our store environment-ish. There will be people in our store environments who've got technical and mathematics and computer science backgrounds. How do we bring those people into other parts of the organization? And how do we make sure our partnerships are strong? So we're partnering with some really good tech companies. We already partner with Google and Databricks and others in that space from a platforms perspective. How do we get the most out of those, especially their overseas clients and what they've done? So we are looking at multiple different strategies. But yeah, I guess other people are looking at those strategies as well. So it's going to be that's going to be the most interesting. It's one of our challenges, I guess, is how do we manage that? And how do we keep developing in that space, and how do we keep getting out there and talking about Endeavour and what we're trying to do to bring people into the business?
That's ace. That is ace. And from a data science and analytics perspective, what do the next couple of years look like at Endeavour?
Well, I think it's massively exciting. And one of the things I've talked about, we've got this vision which is around infinite possibilities, and the reason it's infinite is we've got almost an infinite amount of data. 275 use cases isn't quite infinite, but it's quite big. Yeah. And it's also one of those infinite games, right? I don't think there's ever going to be a point from now forward where companies are going to stop using data yet. So I think the demand's only going to grow. The complexity of what you can do with data in organizations is going to grow, and therefore, the future of business from a data perspective is really, really exciting and really powerful. I don't think I've ever had as much fun in analytics as I'm having now. Because when I started out and kind of got into this by accident, I didn't ever think that this would be the way analytics went over time. So wow. I think we've got a really good roadmap ahead of us. If we get it right, we can deliver some serious value to the organization. And I think in terms of practical applications of data science, we've got some cracking use cases to chase after, and that's still really only scratching the surface, where the 275 use cases are all up for grabs, I guess, as we move forward. And that's just based on what we can imagine today. You would expect that as we mature, we will discover more use cases or potential use cases. Things will emerge from the business as well in terms of these are problems. Have we thought about how we can solve this with analytics? So we just need to, I guess, get the momentum going and start this journey, and then look at how we accelerate. But yeah, I think not just in our org, but there are really exciting opportunities across retail, across any space, I would say, in terms of analytics over the next couple of years. It's a really exciting time to be an analyst, I guess, or to be running analytics teams. And the other thing is some of the analysts and data scientists that we managed to bring into the organization, right? They're really smart. So, I just get blown away by some of the stuff we do, right? And some of the numbers we start to throw out in terms of the 100 trillion calculations a day being done by machine learning algorithms, and you go, that's just how many noughts is that? It just becomes so there is that other element of this fear factor of how do you keep up with all of this, because you're bringing in PhDs and people who've got lots of experience in data science and building models. But I think one of the things of this squad formation that we're talking about is you can actually distribute some of that decision making into the teams, right? So say, well, you're the data science expert, you tell me what the answer is on that, and I'll leave you alone. We'll give you the budget, we'll give you the tools, and we'll unblock things, and then we'll get out of the way. So yeah, it's really exciting, but it's also really scary because you've got to keep on your toes, and obviously there's a lot of value to deliver, right? So that's the flip side of it, is the opportunity's there, but you've got to deliver the value that comes with that opportunity as well.
Oh, mate, 100%. Yeah, and with the pace of expansion that you guys have, obviously the universe of opportunities is big, but also the opportunities within the team. And they say that when you get a seat on a rocket ship, you don't ask which seat you have.
Yeah.
So there's definitely a lot of opportunities from that side as well. If people want to develop their leadership skills or become more senior or mentor others, have a bigger organizational impact, heaps of opportunities for that front too. So it's super exciting.
Yeah, and that's something that so if I look at what my responsibilities are, right, it's about delivering the outcomes. If I look at then our broader our broader organization. So Rob's team in particular, Rob is focused mainly on building the capability of an analytics team. It's probably why I forget that one, is that I'm focused just almost solidly on delivery, whereas Rob's got to think of this broader thing of how do I actually build talent, how do I build capability, how do I give people career progression and stuff. But just the fact I kind of touched on before, how much we've grown over the last 2 to 3 years means that those development opportunities are there. And as I kind of alluded to, there's only going to be more and more opportunity, I guess. So it's only going to keep growing. That's the other exciting thing, I guess. If you want to develop your career, if you want to work on some really cool things, but also in a business that's, we're a hospitality company, right? It's in our DNA to be focused on having fun and being real, and we're a liquor company and we're a hospitality company. That's kind of what we want for our customers. So it's also what we want for our team. So that's the other side to why it's quite fun. It's quite fun to work in this industry and in this business. And there's a lot less of the kind of organizational politics than I've seen in some places. So I guess that's the other side to it is, it's a fun place to work as well. I'm not really one for forced fun, but it's quite contagious, I think, in terms of the experience working here as well.
That's great. That is awesome. Mate, from having, from wineries to retail to hotels, the universe there is amazing. Best spot for people to check out what's going on? Would it be like the events? The careers part of the site? Or? Yeah,
there's an Endeavour careers page. There's also LinkedIn, and we don't have our distinct one for our world yet, but there's an Endeavour X, which is our digital team page on LinkedIn as well. I'm fairly active on LinkedIn. I like to have an opinion on things, so I kind of normally post rubbish on everybody else's walls. But there's me. There's a few others like Rob Allen and Xi Liang who are worth following as well, or like connecting with. So that's the other one. I'm sure you'll post a link to my name in the coverage of this. So that's probably the easiest way to reach out and get in touch. We've got some really exciting opportunities and we're working on some really cool stuff.
Brilliant. We'll include the links on the show notes. And mate, thank you so much for coming on the show, for telling us about your experience, your learning, your journey. And mate, as I said, it's super, super exciting. And you guys have done so much of the hard work to make something amazing. So it's definitely everything is on the right track.
Awesome. Well, thank you. My favorite topic is talking about me. So I'm going to talk about myself and what I want to do for an hour. So thank you for giving me the opportunity and catch up with you soon.
Sounds great. Thanks, mate. Thanks for watching this video all the way to the end. I hope that you got a lot out of this discussion. And if you're watching on YouTube, please like and subscribe to the channel so more people can find out about the challenges that leaders have in the analytics and AI space. And that's what we're trying to share in Data Futurology. So please like and subscribe. And if you enjoyed today's episode, please tell your friends. Thank you so much.